We are talking running backs and quarterbacks ahead of the NFL draft on today's RotoViz Overtime, along with Travis May. We had him on the Monday edition where we talked wide receivers and tight ends. Lots of good nuggets and information in there from all the different players that we did run through and discuss. So if you haven't checked that out, when we finish up today's show, you've listened to this one, jump back over. That was the Monday edition of the podcast. And of course, make sure you are subscribed to the RotoViz Overtime podcast to get all these shows once they go live and are available. But excited to have Travis back here once again. Sneak peek behind the curtain. We recorded these shows back to back. I'm sure people are really surprised to hear that. That is how, as they say, the sausage is made. You know, we peel back the curtain sometimes. We were also talking about the times as we get ready to record this second show. It is 5:50 p.m. Monday as I record. I believe we're at close to, what are we at, almost noon with you, Travis? Is that right? You're in
coming up on noon for me. So yeah,
and then Shawn is at 9:50 a.m. as we record this. So we love to talk about the Eastern time zone that's where me and Shawn get our times ready to record shows. But we managed to all be here at the one time, which is always a great sign. The tricky part is when maybe you're sitting there and the time has changed for daylight savings or something like that, and you're wondering where the other part of the show is. But we are all good, and we're ready to talk some running backs and quarterbacks. Interesting class. I think some pretty talented guys in there. The top of the list being Bijan Robinson. Shawn, like I did with the top wide receiver prospect, take it away with the top running back.
Well, Travis, I mean, Robinson, absolutely fantastic. So instead of talking about all the ways he's fantastic, let's kind of put you on the hot seat right from the beginning here. And I mean, historically, how great is this guy? Rank him for us compared to Bryce Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, sort of the greatest prospects.
Is he the best running back of all time?
I mean, already, yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame already. I think that's how that works. But no, there's a chance that he might actually be number one of that bunch that you mentioned. Because I mean, Barkley we love because he was just that next level freak athlete. But as an actual running back, he was. There were questions about his down to down success rate. You know, like even coming in, like we didn't really talk about that much because we just wanted to talk about like his ridiculous run against Iowa, or his 4.33 speed or something like that. But he's right there, I think, with Saquon. I didn't think so for a long time, but I think it was just because I look back on Saquon as a prospect through, with rose-colored glasses on a little bit too much. And so I as we do with Zeke, and I think about that playoff run, but I think objectively, Bijan's right there, if not ahead of all of those guys. So the hype is very real, but we've known that he was this special for quite some time.
So are there any to say that? I mean, you're basically saying that this guy is the perfect prospect. Is there even the tiniest red flag that people should be aware of, and or maybe even more relevant would be? I mean, are there any kind of landing spots that would be such a poor fit that it would knock him not necessarily out of the top spot or at the position or even overall, but it would limit your enthusiasm a little bit?
Oh man, like if it was something weird, like the Titans just went ahead and drafted him. Like I think back to even how like what happened with Derrick Henry. Like he came in and he was the running back 2 in that class, but the Titans already had DeMarco Murray, and DeMarco Murray actually held on to the job, and Derrick Henry was basically, I don't know, not wasted, but not fully utilized for like 2 years. And that would be kind of doomsday scenario for fantasy football purposes. And not that that's the most likely scenario, but we didn't think it was the likely scenario with the Titans at the time either. And it just so happened that was the case with Derrick Henry. So that would be kind of terrible, but long-term, my Titans are incredibly frustratingly dedicated to the run. So that might be a good thing for him long-term.
Next up, then we have Jahmyr Gibbs, and maybe a unique prospect. Who's similar to him, kind of in the similar vein as Shawn's question? Is there anyone that kind of seems like a like-for-like comparison with Gibbs?
Well, I mean, he's Jamal Charles, right? Like that's who he is. Like he,
don't get Shawn too excited here. We know how much Shawn likes Jamal.
I do, and that's why I say that. I've got. I mean, he's been the I mean, he's been kind of that comp for me for a while now, but then he had the audacity to show up like at the exact same weight at the combine and run the exact same 40. And as I've joked about on a couple of shows already this draft season, all that's left is he just needs to join the Chiefs at the end of round 1 here, and then the rest is history. He'll also be a Hall of Famer, day one. So yeah,
we thought that all is, when we look back at the draft with the Chiefs taking Edwards-Helaire, we kind of joke from time to time that all we needed there was for them to take Jonathan Taylor. So
seriously,
let's not talk about Gibbs to the Chiefs just yet.
Well, we can dream, right? Like
we can definitely dream.
Like that's who the Chiefs meant to draft that year. They're like, man, they just didn't know
spelled the name wrong.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, we meant Jahmyr Gibbs, but he just wasn't old enough yet, so it wasn't technicalities. But I still can't believe that. Like Jonathan Taylor staring them right at the face, and like, you know what? We should probably just take the running back 6 in this class. That's fine.
I'm going to jump, Shawn. How excited are you to hear that there? Not that we'll forget about the CEH draft pick, but that Gibbs may fall into the Jamal Charles bracket, and then that he may end up on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, I know that there are some analysts who are justifiably, I mean, if you want to emphasize the wrong things, are justifiably not that excited about him. But I'm always telling people he's Jamal Charles. Maybe Jamal Charles, who's a better receiver. And so I look at this and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, it just seems so absurd to say it after what Travis has just said about Robinson. But I'm feeling there's like a 35% chance that Gibbs is actually the guy who scores the most points over the next 5 years. And I mean, partly we know that just because there are going to be potential for injuries, but even if it's not injury related, and I mean, the landing spot obviously is going to make a difference. I don't think that there's a scenario here. People have asked me, is there a scenario where, I mean, number one, the reason the scenario like him jumping Robinson would make a lot more sense than CEH jumping Taylor was that these guys are closer than those guys were, where you got one of the great, I mean, for me personally, Jonathan Taylor is still a better prospect than either Robinson or Saquon Barkley. A little bit of a minority there, but I think we don't, that's a whole other podcast. But I mean, there was no way in which Edwards-Helaire was going to be similar, regardless of what team you went to.
Yeah.
And again, it's easy to say that now in retrospect, where Taylor was so amazing. And
it was easy to say it then. It was really easy to say it then, but people were like, no. Yeah.
Well, and again, we got to throw in our little plug for the rookie guide. We did keep that as Taylor in the rookie guide, which I think was the right call. So
I think so. I think you got it.
Gibbs. I mean, if you're saying Jamal Charles and Gibbs goes, it doesn't even have to be the Chiefs. If he goes into a good situation, I think it's easy to forget that the guys who've been scoring points in the last several years, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler. I don't think he's Christian McCaffrey, but when you're talking about Marshall Faulk, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Jamal Charles, Ray Rice, small guys score fantasy points.
They do. They can. And it's not that it's ideal for anyone to be like sub 200. But I think that he can play at 200 or 205 and be just as explosive, 210 even, and be more than fine in the NFL. And he doesn't have to either. Like, he really doesn't have to. Because of his receiving ability, he's going to have a nice floor value, and he's a fantastic runner too. I know that, like, if you want to dive into the analytical like efficiency numbers at Georgia Tech, there were times that he struggled. His rushing yards over expectation, we could overthink things there, but a lot of efficiency metrics aren't necessarily sticky when it comes to running back predictiveness. So yeah, I just like Gibbs a lot, and it might sound like too hot takey to say he's Jamal Charles, but that's in the cards. Really, it really is.
So we've started off with people are getting excited listening to this. Travis, is this going to be the greatest running back class of all time? We've got Zach Charbonnet. Is he in a tier by himself after this? Just I guess we didn't touch it, but we didn't say overall the class. How excited are you about this running back class in general? Is it that it's very top heavy with those guys, or is it overall here where we should be getting pretty excited?
Yeah, I think it's a great class top to bottom. I mean, there's like 15 guys probably that are in the conversation at least to be day one, day two, not day one, but day two at least, draft picks. Like, I mean, there's so much disagreement when it comes to like how high should we have Roschon Johnson? How high should we have Israel Abanikanda? How high should we have Tyjae Spears? And it feels like everyone has like a my guy, or even like a type of my guy that they want to rank up over a bunch of these guys in this tier. But yeah, I would say in regards to your first question with Charbonnet, he's not probably quite in his own tier by himself, but there's an argument to be made that he might be, because does he have size questions? No. Does he have athleticism questions? No. Does he have like receiving game questions? I don't think so. So like you go down the list and there aren't many questions with Charbonnet, whereas you might have one or two with a bunch of the guys, running back 4 through 15. I don't have as many with Sharp. So yeah, Zach Charbonnet 2 years ago, definitely, when he couldn't really take hold of the Michigan backfield. But it's frustrating how like basically no one it seems has fully taken hold of that backfield. For those that follow Michigan football, like even now, like it's Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, and we both want them to succeed, but I'd rather them be on separate teams so they both produce. And so yeah, when he went to UCLA, perfect opportunity, and he killed it. And so yeah, running back 3 for me. And there's almost a tier break, and there might be. I struggle to get all the way there with him because he doesn't feel truly elite, but he feels like he should be around 2 selection in the real draft.
You mentioned not having that elite thing necessarily. I guess for me, that's almost a bigger red flag than having a red flag, in that you say he checks all the boxes. But when we look at these guys who really score at the NFL level, the vast majority of them have something that really stands out. Now, I think you could make the argument that maybe Josh Jacobs wouldn't really fit that. Now, he goes in the first round, so he's going to get a ton of opportunity. He got that opportunity. He failed for a long time to the point where they don't even execute the 5th-year option. Although, again, for a running back and the salaries, that's a little bit of a different thing. Certainly, they wish they had done it. But you look at him, and then you look at the next group, and some of these guys in the next tier or tiers do have some exciting elements to their game. Break down for us the next 2 groups. So I've got a potentially really large tier. I had a couple of these guys were in a second tier, but I wanted to throw them up into this group just to not bias it for you to say, okay, well, Sean's already put these guys below. So, I mean, we got A-Chain, we got Spears, we've got Evans, Abanikanda that you mentioned, Tucker, obviously some weirdness there with his ability to work out and whatnot. McBride, again, some questions about the workout. And then Johnson, controversial. Chase Brown, someone that Blair has written a fantastic deep dive on. Anybody who really wants to get in the weeds there, I would check out his piece. And then Miller, another workout kind of thing. Is that 1 tier? Is it 2 tiers? Is it even like 3 tiers? Who's rising to the top of this group for you, and who's kind of falling back?
Despite the imperfect production profile, I'm not sure if you even mentioned Tank Bigsby in there, but he's definitely in that next group. I don't know how big that next group is, but for me, there is just kind of one big blob where the opportunity and landing spot is going to be very, very important. Really, from that like 4 to maybe not quite 15, but there's a big group that I'm not really sure of. Like, I really like a lot of what they do, but I don't necessarily confidently go, man, that is obviously the running back 4. Like, regardless of capital, he's going to be over this player. Like, and when I tier players, I think of, man, there would have to be a major flip flop in opportunity or a major flip flop in capital to move them around. And I'm a little bit more fluid once you get outside those top 3.
And does it feel to you like, in terms of the NFL draft, the NFL is potentially like that in terms of those guys from 5 through 15 could really go in any order, and if the guy that is ranked 7th goes 15th, do you think it could flip that much between those guys that there isn't really a consensus?
Not necessarily that like my 15 would move to 4, but there's just a lot of overlap, I guess, between and gray area between groups and tiers there.
Venn diagrams are overlapping at that point.
They are. They're like, and they're all in a circle. So I don't know how to actually rank
It's
them.
just
Like
one
top
big
to bottom.
circle.
Yeah, it's just like a circle of Venn diagrams, like where, and it makes sense if you have a broken brain like me. But like, you know, certain players that have elite speed, like the Devin A chains, but he has major size questions. But he was really efficient. But again, even louder now, size questions. I want to rank Devin A chain ridiculously high because he has Olympic level sprinting ability. And if he can pack on 5 to 10 pounds and produce anyway, like Austin Eckler is like that outcome is in the cards for that kind of player. And then you have a handful of guys that run really angry and break a bunch of tackles, a la the Tank Bigsby's of the world, that if they go to an opportunity where they're even 1A, I would say that they have the skills and ability and athleticism to shove out 1B and be a solid producer. But the shelf life might not be as long for that particular type of runner. And so like there's all these players that have a little bit of something, but then also a question in their profile. And so it's hard to confidently say, you know, this player, like, again, it's just like this player's running back 4, this player's 5. Like Zach Evans is another one. Like I want to rank him way higher, but he just has throughout his career had 1 or 2 things that have prevented him from being a true alpha running back. And I wonder if there's just some variables or information that we, as somebody who doesn't get to interview players, just doesn't know about him, that's going to, you know, hurt his real draft capital, that's going to hurt his longevity or ability to be a, you know, quote unquote good locker room guy. It's anecdotal, but it's, you know, it matters. And so everyone, I think, outside that top 3 has at least one question where I'm like, man, that kind of puts a dent in the profile.
And is there anyone that, when we're looking into potential sleeper category, I don't know even if maybe it is one of those guys in that top 15 of the running backs, is there anyone that you're looking to plant your flag on that the listeners should be keeping an eye on over the next couple of weeks to see where they land?
Yeah, I think that guy for me has for a long time been Tank Bigsby. And it's just the external factors that have impacted the imperfect profile, I think, have some people questioning his ability. But dating back to when he was probably 17, he was in the conversation to be ranked over Bijan Robinson. Like it was Zach Evans, who was the running back 1 in that class for a long time, ahead of Bijan. He fell down because of some, frankly, you know, lightly, how do I put this? Just kind of emotional or social or commitment issues. You know, the services kind of dipped him down the rankings because he was weird about his recruiting journey throughout his final year. But Tank Bigsby was barely rated below Bijan Robinson because at the time, Tank Bigsby was just as good as a receiving threat, if not even better coming in, and had fantastic contact balance, had fantastic vision. Just went to a system that wasn't as friendly, went through a coaching change, and you know, just struggled offensively as a whole, struggled with quarterback play and consistency around him. And so there were a lot of external factors that Tank Bigsby just couldn't overcome. But even so, he had back-to-back 1,100-yard plus seasons. And so I think he's still somebody that I think in the right situation could be immediately that running back 3 that overtakes Zach Charbonnet, or comes up to compete with, at least in the short term, you know, a Bijan or Jahmyr Gibbs. So he's that type of potential moonshot type play that, you know, that a lot of people I see him, you know, running back 8, running back 9, running back 10 or below, but he could be up in that stratosphere.
Travis, again, we want to let everybody know who, if there's anybody doesn't. I mean, you are the college football guru, so I wanted to ask you this question as I'm thinking through it, and it's something that does come up for me pretty consistently as I'm looking at potentially these top guys. And that would be the level of competition for Spears and McBride, who, if you eliminate that, then I mean, those 2 guys are extremely exciting. But that does introduce some uncertainty, I think, when you're looking at their metrics, knowing, you know, the teams that they play for. One of the things kind of interesting, I mean, Tulane, obviously a good team last season. And if you look at their strength of schedule, at least, you know, according to some ways of calculating it, almost identical to UCLA. And so you would have basically maybe similar concerns for players who play in the Pac-12. But obviously Tulane being good themselves doesn't mean that they're not playing some weaker teams. Looking at those guys, I mean, how much do we need to adjust? What do we need to know about those two players given the caliber of play that they're dealing with game in, game out?
Yeah, I think that's something that even NFL analytics staffers are still trying to figure out. I've had the opportunity over the past 6 months to talk to multiple just nerds like myself, but they actually work for teams, and they, like when they ask me questions, I asked, what are you guys struggling with, and they were, one of the big things was like how to weight mobility and ability to avoid sacks for quarterbacks, and then second, it was like within just every position, how to properly weight and adjust for strength of schedule or adjust for strength of teammates, and like how that impacts somebody who might be really performing well, but like, is this just because of everything coming together perfectly for them and it's really easy given their level of athleticism at that level of play? That's a question that we've been arguing about in fantasy circles, and like real NFL decision makers and analysts and analytics staffers they don't know what to do with. And I think it's very real because in both circumstances, they're the best playmaker on their team. But yeah, Tulane the year prior was 2-10, so you better be the best offensive playmaker on your team. And Tulane turned it around, perfect offense. Michael Pratt, his quarterback, teams were trying to poach him away this offseason to move him up a level and make him a Power 5 quarterback, but he chose to even return for one more year. Like, he was a really good quarterback. It was a really good offensive system, perfect for Tyjae Spears to succeed. And props to him for putting the season together that he did. But man, his running back too, there's a 0% chance he ever gets draft capital, and like the competition is a real question throughout his entire career. And he was, even before this year, when there was, anybody with a pulse to share carries with, he wasn't the feature, but even so, the guys he was splitting time with were future undrafted free agent level talents. So there's questions there. And then with McBride especially, there's just no one there that's remotely competent that would ever take a significant amount of work from him. And the competition concerns are way more real for a team like UAB playing against Conference USA stuff versus AAC conference schedule level opponents, because the AACs, for those that don't follow college football, they're like in this in-between space. They're like almost Power 5, and they're better than the rest of the group of 5, but they're not really quite up to par. Whereas Conference USA this past year or two might have been the worst Division I like FBS conference in existence. And so I have major concerns with the competition level for McBride, even more so with Spears. And then there's medical things surfacing with Spears, and still we won't get testing on McBride. So I do not have them very high, and I will be lower even after capital happens, even if they both get reached for, then basically everyone. I will be lower on them by a good margin.
Moving on to the quarterback position, and this is a class where there's kind of 4 names, I guess, towards the top or at the top of it. We have Bryce Young, we have CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. We're going to leave the latter 2 of those for just a moment to focus on Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Coming in with those guys, are they, for you, clearly the top 2 prospects as we move into this class? And I guess doing our little comparison that we did earlier, anyone that you would be comparing them to from, I guess, let's say the last decade? You can go before that. Obviously, we've had a group of quarterbacks who have a very prolonged career, so maybe it would be somebody who came into the NFL more than a decade ago but retired since that. We'll leave all options open. And then any red flags with those guys? We've had some rookie quarterbacks come in over the last 4 or 5 years and have immediate success. We've also seen some come in and struggle in that rookie year and then start to pick things up, like Trevor Lawrence, who obviously had a big step up in year 2. But how are we feeling about those 2 in particular entering the draft here, and what sort of impact they could have in the NFL?
They've just been the safest projections for success for a while. It's been back-to-back years where they're both at least in the conversation to be in Heisman. They are without a doubt ridiculously athletic and accurate. They don't really either use their mobility that I know they possess as much as we typically like to see. But Bryce Young has the improvisation to his game to extend plays, and like his average time to throw, like that shows up there. But he doesn't really use his legs as much as like Lamar Jackson might. But so it's weird because he's super small and super athletic and super smart. And like there's recently it was leaked that he tested the best in terms of the S2 like process testing that's actually local here in like near Franklin, Tennessee. Teams basically test how fast you process information. It's big in Major League Baseball. It's bigger in football now. Bryce Young was number one there. He's like, two back-to-back seasons, 90th percentile marks in pass efficiency. So I wouldn't, knock any team for taking Bryce. CJ Stroud, I mean, he's probably the most accurate passer, has back-to-back 95th percentile plus pass efficiency marks by, I don't know, like every measure possible. If you want to talk about, adjusted yards per attempt or, a scheme adjusted pass efficiency, which is a metric I made for RotoViz, or you want to talk about his passing EPA per play, or, even advanced charting metrics. Like these guys are just like, they're going to hit, period. I don't know who the comp is for Young. There isn't probably one because of his size. Like maybe like if you squint, it's Kyler, but he's not as mobile, and he's probably not as thick technically. But with Stroud, I think I see a little bit of Joe Burrow with more athleticism. And Ohio State's weird with how they even let their quarterbacks run. Like they basically just tell them don't. And that showed up with Fields as he became like a borderline 10%, 12% rushing yard market share quarterback to, oh, by the way, I'm going to put up 1,000 rushing yards this year. I could see something like that happening with Stroud, where like how was he this mobile? Why wasn't he doing that in college? Because like his first collegiate touch was a 48-yard rushing touchdown. I think people forget that. And so they're both just head and shoulders above as passers and as decision makers. And maybe Stroud struggles against the blitz, but man, like it's hard to find a critique that's legitimate with either.
Do you like either of them to run in the NFL? Because one of the things you said, and I think this is very true, is that these are about as safe and high level of prospects as you're going to ever have. And yet, when we're thinking about it from a fantasy perspective, they have to hit at, no one's going to be Mahomes. You've got to hit at a Burrow level. And you even think about someone like Justin Herbert, who 2 years ago was a superstar. He did surprise some people. These guys have better numbers than he did in college for sure, but he immediately demonstrated that he was that guy. And yet, if you don't run, then you've got to be a consistent megastar to have the kind of fantasy impact that I think people are assuming that is automatic for these two quarterbacks, which in some ways isn't fair to them. But like you said, they're athletic enough that if they wanted to, they probably could some.
Yeah, and I just don't think either is going to be the next Lamar, the next Jalen Hurts, the next insert quarterback here, Justin Fields even. Like that's not their game. But I think they can be athletic enough. Like in the league anymore, like if you basically just get viewed as a complete replacement statue if you don't, get at least 150 plus rushing yards a year, like maybe even more than that, maybe 200, 250 rushing yards a year. Like the bare minimum for mobility is like a Dak Prescott profile. But if you're like a Jared Goff profile, like the position of like almost everyone's like, man, you're not long for the league. Like I'd rather have so-and-so. I'd rather have so-and-so. And so I think they're both, more athletic than a Goff, but they can be, Stafford plus mobility, mobile enough right away. And I would not be surprised if they're much more than that. But it was frustrating because when you try to profile players and you look at rushing metrics, both fall short by quite a bit, below what we want to see. Like anymore, like in college, like you should be getting 10 or 15% of your team's rushing yards if you're, a good enough pocket manipulator and modern NFL prototype. But neither really did that consistently. So the passing's there. Now show me the value that I know you have with your legs.
And so that kind of forces us or creates a great segue into a couple of players who are almost the exact opposite. And what was your reaction to Anthony Richardson's combine? Because it seemed like the reaction from most people is that this is the greatest athlete of all time. And so now we can definitely ignore what he did as an actual quarterback, as an actual passer. And that may be, again, me very much slanting the question. But, I mean, we knew how athletic he was. So, I mean, there seems to me like there's an element of double counting, but also, would you say that the athleticism shows up as a passer? Would you say that athleticism shows up as a rusher? I mean, one of the things that is a little bit odd to me is that, I mean, again, and you were part of this process, but we were a little bit higher on guys like Sam Howell and Desmond Ridder at RotoViz, and I think most people were. But it seems to me like, and again, when you talk about how it's going to transition to the NFL, it can be different than what it was in college. But there's not like some massive difference between how Anthony Richardson ran in college versus how Sam Howell and Desmond Ridder ran in college. So, having said all of that, the combine, where he is now, Anthony Richardson, go.
Sure. Yeah, that was interesting because we knew for a very long time, for nerds like me that follow recruiting, we were hyping up Anthony Richardson when he was like a junior, senior in high school because we're like, whoa, look at this giant just, throwing these little tiny children to the side. And and it's funny watching, future NFL athletes just dunk on, these 5'7" safeties that will never even play college football. And so we were really excited about the potential athletically for forever. And that's always been Richardson's calling card. Like that's been the only reason for a year or two. The potential for him to be this kind of early first round pick was there. It's like, but hey, if he puts it together as a passer, it'll happen. And I'll get to that in a moment. But the combine thing is like, I had to build out some projections and expectations for what I do now with Mojo. Because like how much, should a certain percentage of their value change based on a certain outcome. And like the betting lines for his 40 were like what he ran. It was like 4.45, 4.44. Like where you can bet on that. It's like, hey, that's what you got to pay up. That's the expectation. And he did exactly what we expected. Like I missed his vertical jump by a ½ inch. I missed his broad jump by 2 inches. It's like, yes, we knew he was going to be the most athletic quarterback of all time, like, or at least in the conversation. And then it happened, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, like, how did this happen?" And it's like, we knew it already. But I get it. Most people don't tune in till the combine, so like, "Oh my gosh," and so that everyone has to, move him up and confidently rank him as a top 5 pick. But what you said is something I have not said or really thought of about, and when comparing him to last year's quarterbacks, there were really mobile guys last year that were better passers last year that didn't get capital last year. They weren't the otherworldly athlete necessarily that Richardson was, but in terms of his actual rushing production, it wasn't really different than even Sam Howell's last season in North Carolina. So how it actually translates to the field, like that matters a lot. I feel like every single year we get stuck, the NFL gets stuck still on like, man, what could be versus what actually happened on the field. You know what I mean? And so what actually happened on the field was Richardson was mobile and he added value. He missed some tackles, especially on the one LSU run that everyone's shown 4,000 times. But he also missed, I don't know, like every short pass he ever attempted, it feels like. And so he took some, like he took shots downfield and made some big plays because he does have a rocket arm. He can, probably sit on his knees and chuck it 70 yards. That's cool. That's a great party trick, Anthony Richardson. And I'm forever going to get painted as the, negative hater of Anthony Richardson. And that's okay. All I'm just doing is asking questions like, hey man, but what do we do with the fact that he's got like a 36th percentile passing profile? Like, what do we do with the fact that there is no comp in existence because he's the worst passer to ever even be considered drafted in the last 10 years? Like, and that's not even hyperbole. That's just reality. And so like he's good at avoiding pressure, and that athleticism shows up there. He's got a very low pressure to sack rate. Great. He also has a great internal clock that shows up. He knows when to throw away the ball. Sometimes he actually does it too early. He's got clean pocket because he had fantastic offensive line play, and he just chucks it away because he doesn't know what he's looking at downfield probably in some cases. So I just have a lot more questions with him because he's literally never demonstrated that he's a good passer in a large sample. His highlight plays are wow worthy. Man, that 15-yard speed out, that was incredible. Anticipation, accuracy, power, fantastic. That deep over, man, you were getting hit in the leg. You still, perfect spot. Man, like that deep ball, like down the right sideline, fantastic. You add the value with your legs in LSU. You do the pirouette against Utah. Like, he's got the highlights. We've all seen the same 7 plays, and this basically the only 7 plays because like his sample size is so small. So, man, we're just projecting with incredible confidence at this point, aren't we? It just feels weird.
Could it be a positive that there are no comps? And is it a mild point in his favor that, I mean, they faced a difficult schedule?
A difficult schedule. And you know what? His wide receivers, bad. They're really bad. Like worse than Will Levis's situation. Offensive system. I know some Florida boosters that were kind of mad at how Napier was trying to use Richardson. Richardson was allegedly very upset at how Napier, the newer coach there, was trying to run and utilize him. Primarily a pistol heavy system formation wise, so it wasn't what Richardson wanted to run or what he was used to running. And I think that really contributed to him not staying in college. So there are some built-in, next level excuses that we could have with Richardson. And it is maybe a plus that we've never seen somebody like this because, he's just basically an alien athletically. But he had really great offensive line play. He's got a very short resume of production that is bad as a passer. So, man, I'm just worried. Just typically what we do with rookie quarterbacks, if they're not immediately amazing, we critique them to a ridiculous level and panic and throw them in the trash. Like even really good players like Trevor Lawrence, people are wanting to get rid of him after his first year. Justin Fields, we're still like having people saying he's bad even after what he did this year. And Zach Wilson, he's already out of the league apparently in most people's minds. And just a year or two ago, they're like top 5 no-brainer picks. And so if Richardson's in the wrong scenario, like wrong situation, I feel like people are going to abandon him quickly.
You mentioned some of the contrasts between Richardson and Levis just in passing there. Levis, the other guy who is interesting, does seem like he'll go early. And maybe there are some comps for him. Would a Josh Allen, a Daniel Jones, a Jake Locker, are any of those 3 comps accurate? And if they're all accurate, does that kind of give us a sense of the full range of what you could get with that kind of profile?
I think in terms of a passer, I'm not a fan necessarily of Will Levis. He's just below what we want to see analytically in terms of passing metrics everywhere, but it's not as bad as it is with Richardson. It wasn't as bad as it was with Josh Allen or Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was even worse. And, there's people that are trying to tell me he's good, but he can't even, he's got how many passing touchdowns he had last year? Like 16 or something in a full season. Cool. That's a hit, guys. Whatever. But anyway, no, I think he doesn't have the mobility that Josh Allen did in college or Daniel Jones did actually. Duke was terrible. And so he had to be the running game too. I think he accounted for more than 15%, if not over 20% of the rushing yards one of his seasons. Josh Allen, same deal. He was like 17, 18% or more of the rushing yards for Wyoming because he just had to put the offense on his back and probably had even a better cannon for an arm than Will Levis did. But yeah, there are definitely some accuracy questions. I don't think either one is a fair comp because Will Levis is not as much of a threat with his legs. And I'm not just saying that because of this year, because he was not 100%. He had lower body issues, ankle issues, whatever it was that affected his mobility. And he was taking, a sack every third play, it felt like, because of it. But, the version that we should get at the next level could be 2021 Will Levis, which is just good enough to disappoint. He's got that, to me, he's more of like a Kenny Pickett profile than he is like a Josh Allen. I don't think the upside is as high because his mobility is not great. And his arm is fantastic, but the accuracy is not there. So it's just like that profiles like a miss. Like that's not saying he's terrible. He just profiles like a miss. and a miss without incredibly high upside.
Final question to wrap up on the quarterbacks is there's obviously 4 names that we have discussed there. Who goes as the top quarterback in this class in terms of draft pick?
Oh, that's CJ Stroud. I mean, it's been the money favorite for a while. And I think that comes to fruition. I think he fits, and the staff loves him there. Maybe Reich is like the only one that doesn't. There's buzz. I don't know who to listen to, but Stroud's the most accurate passer with the prototypical size. And yeah, sometimes the layup's just that easy.
Yeah, I always find it interesting when we get to these last couple of weeks. Sometimes,
oh man,
things change so much in the final.
Hendon Hooker's a first rounder now, guys. Did you know that? And so, I mean, I think he deserves that conversation, really. But we just every year it's like we got to throw one more name in the hat, guys. That could be, going in here in this draft, in every position too. So. Yeah,
we'll see what happens over the next kind of 3 weeks or so. But awesome to have you on these 2 podcasts this week to talk on RotoViz Overtime to give the community a little bit of an insight into the upcoming class. Obviously, you can follow Travis, as I mentioned, at FF_Travis M. You can check out his work over at Mojo, where he is the lead college football analyst. Shawn, as we get ready to close it out, anything final for Travis?
Well, he got me kind of fired up discussing his stock market on the last show. So Travis, give us a little bit of a tease again for how this is going to go.
Sure. I mean, it's something that I feel like a lot of us have thought about. Like, man, what if I could actually invest in an athlete like a stock? Like, it's how much time have I wasted, trying to predict the future in my Devy leagues, and now I can actually go monetize that, Except I can't because I work for Mojo, but you guys can, identifying those players on the college football market that are going to make it in the NFL. And we're about to add like multiple hundreds of more college football players shortly after the NFL draft, where you can actually invest in them just like they're a stock. And, like somebody might be, $1 and then they, up to $30 and you made 30x on your money. Like, I think that the most common the question I get is like, well, what was Tom Brady when he came into the league? And he was like $3. Like we backdated and did all our pricing and everything. Like he would have been $3 on Mojo, and he finished with $170 of accrued what we call Mojo value on the stock market. So that would have been an okay return, I think. But there's all kinds of opportunities to just have fun and use it as a kind of like a player value tool, even if you're not in New Jersey. Right now, we're only live in New Jersey because we're trying to do it the right way, actually be a fully regulated kind of stock market that passes all the smell tests with, sports books and financial backing for, all the nerdy financial laws that I don't know anything about, but somebody does. And so, but yeah, if you want to check it out, we've got college football, we have NFL, NBA, we're adding baseball the week before the NFL draft, actually. So that's a lot of fun. We had like all these crazy fun March Madness, like single game type call and put options, like short-term stuff. And we're going to have more of those apparently. So whatever you can do with the stock market, apparently you're going to be able to do that with Mojo here with real professional and future professional athletes. So that's the Mojo deal. But I appreciate you asking. It's funny. Like every time I've gone on a bunch of shows this spring talking about it, and every time like I talk about it, even if somebody hasn't heard of it, they have all these questions for me after the show. I'm gonna have to ask you about this and this player, and we might do that off air. But it's been fun. I can't even believe it's a real job. Like when I'm not sure my grandparents even fully to this day. I worked there 6 months, and like they act like they know what I'm saying. I don't think they do. But that's okay. It's just fun. That's all that matters to me.
Yeah, it feels strange sometimes, especially when we're talking about fantasy. You're talking about the stock market side of things, and sometimes I try and explain that I do a podcast with somebody who lives in Arizona, and we do that a couple of times a week. And he said, "Oh, okay." So sometimes I just explain that I do like basically like a radio show. Is basically what I do. So yeah, but awesome to have Travis on, and whether people around us understand or not, we understand. We love talking NFL, we love talking the draft, we love talking all different ways that you can get in and involved and have fun doing so. But it's been awesome having Travis on for these 2 shows this week. We will be back with a 3rd show that will drop on Friday, myself and Shawn. So do come back and check that out. Subscribe to the RotoViz Overtime podcast feed. As always, you can check out all of Shawn's work up on rotoviz.com. If you're looking to sign up for a 1-year RotoViz NFL pass, you can use the code RVRadio2023 at checkout to save yourself 10%. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Overtime Ireland. And until we are back, have a good one.